Welcome back to the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. If you are new here, we are all about optimizing the health and performance of the ageless athlete. We have tons of different guests from the medical, exercise, and nutritional fields. So if you're into that type of thing, please subscribe. In today's conversation, Scotty and I are sitting down and talking about our best and brightest points of learning in 2021. We learned a lot in 2021, and we want to share some of our bright spots with you listeners here. If you like today's podcast, please subscribe, rate, review, share with a friend, and enjoy this episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Scott, how goes it?
Hey, it's going pretty good. Pretty good.
Scott, I got a belly full of 72% dark chocolate. I'm ready to roll.
Nice. What's mine full of? Sweet potatoes, ground chicken, and raisins.
Scott, if you gave me 3 guesses to tell what's in your belly, I'd only need one to guess that there was probably some sweet potato in there.
I don't eat near as much as I used to.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I still eat it. I still like it, but there was a point a few years ago I'd eaten just so much. I made it less frequent. But I made a dish the other night that turned out amazing, and it was just on the fly. A little bacon grease, had some ground chicken thawed out. I put that in there. I cubed up some of the yellow sweet potatoes. I threw some raisins, and then I used Jamaican jerk seasoning.
Whoa.
And
hello.
it was
excellent
post-training meal. If anybody's, Anyway.
Throwing a little bit of savory spices into sweet potato, definitely a good change of pace.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the other thing that you bring upon, or you bring about a lot there, Scott, is you always talk about the different varieties of sweet potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many, and more available now than there used to be, I think, due to people experimenting with them more. So yeah, broaden your horizons for sure.
Yeah, I could see like a guy in a old broken down trailer, like with a hazmat suit on, dicing up different types of sweet potatoes to make new strains. It's like this bright blue sweet potato.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get the bright red one. And
Yeah. But I digress. So Scott, this is probably one of our last podcasts of the year, and I thought it would take an opportunity for both of us to kind of ramble back and forth a little bit about the biggest things that we took away from 2021 as coaches, and some of the things we may have learned, fresh and new. Other things might be just reaffirming some of our concepts and beliefs that we've had for quite some time. But I figure we open it up and just talk a little bit about 2021 and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what our learnings were. So off the top of your head there, Scott, is there anything that comes to mind when talking about things that you've learned or relearned in 2021? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, Scott. So if you a couple of things. Usually these are best if they're the things that sort of jump out at you right away. And I would definitely say, and this would be, it's definitely a relearn, because this is not something new to me by any means, but I think learning it better and a huge reaffirmation of its importance would be the idea of the necessity of doing end-range strength training, pretty much through the whole body to maintain, flexibility levels, develop them if that's needed, and have, the integrity of the structure to carry over to just random tasks. I know I've long been into flexibility over like 20 years or whatever, but I didn't ever quite approach it the way I did in 2021. And as far as successes with the people I've worked with, it's been night and day, head and shoulders above prior years in that regard. So that would be a big learning for me. Yeah, that's a great one, Scott. And as you move into 2022, do you have any kind of, different ways that you might approach it or building on what you've done this last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've, certainly refined things, and I'm always looking, and you can always find new things, but I've developed better system around it, which is more helpful. And, how would I lay out the things that we would do in certain sessions? And it basically depends on how many sessions a week a person might need. And, I have like a 5-day template, a 4-day template, a 3-day template, a 2-day template, and some of these have to rotate, but that's kind of how I would generally approach it. And really, it doesn't take a drastic amount of things. So simplifying, picking the things that have been most successful and sticking with those, and saving the others for maybe special occasions. But uh,
Yeah,
basically, streamlining.
that's a good one there, Scott. I think for me, one of the things that jumps off to the page for me is how underrated having enough calories in is for individuals, and how in general, as people clean up their diets, they tend to undereat pretty significantly. um,
Mhm.
Especially for people if they have an active lifestyle, nurses, first responders, construction workers, or people who work in GC, general construction, that kind of stuff. They just burn a ton of calories throughout the day. And if they're eating more of a cleaner diet and less processed foods, less Western diet, you've got to shovel a lot of gruel in your body in order for you to maintain energy, hormone balance, etc. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the last videos that I've done, was just highlighting how many calories a person who weighs, let's say, 180, 185 pounds has to take in. And most people are like, oh, 2,000 calories, that's what I need. And you would go like, that's not even close. Like that's what you would
Yeah.
do like on a substantial cut. But it's interesting to see when I have people like, okay, we're just going to focus on adding an extra 300 or 400 calories a day, and by the end of the week, you'll be a little bit higher up altogether. And then tracking their metrics from there, like how's your sleep, how is your training looking like, and they're like, oh, you know what, I feel a little bit better, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night, and et cetera, et cetera. So for me, I think the under eating thing, both personally and with the clients that I work with, is a big one that I kind of, it was an aha moment for me, Scott.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while to see it. And yeah, I went through that transition at one point too, where I realized that's probably nutritionally the biggest thing people do, particularly people that are switch, like exactly what you said, over to clean eating, because it's just difficult to get in enough calories to even support your base function, much, especially if you have a high demand.
Yeah, and this is supported through my own personal data as well. So I'll give you some numbers to throw out here. So in June of this year, or excuse me, the test was in, I think, May actually. So in May, I'll give you my thyroid function numbers. So TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, free T4, free T3. So my TSH was 199, 1.99. My T4 was 1.18, and my free T3 was 2.61. So
Okay.
that was approximately 6 months ago, maybe over a little over 6 months ago. Now I have done a gut healing protocol since, and conversion of T3 to T4 is very bacterial driven. So obviously there's a gut play here, but looking at my most recent numbers that I did at the beginning of this month, so we'll call it 6 months later, TSH was at 2.23, so that's up a little bit. So it was at 199 before.
Mm.
Free T4 is at 1.6, but free T3 is now at 4.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not only getting much more conversion over to T3, but overall, that's kind of what you want to see when it comes to not only reference ranges, but in terms of ratios of T4 to T3.
Yeah,
Have you
definitely.
seen this before, Scott?
Yeah, the increase of calories changing the thyroid hormone.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, on lots of levels. And I'm sure if you had done some of the other metrics like a reverse
Yep.
T3, you would probably have a significantly lower there, because that's the, even if you have the T3, that still doesn't mean your cells are actually going to use it
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you have a lot of reverse T3 in the system, that basically puts the brakes on and docks in the receptor sites and slows things down.
Yep. Yep. Which also, I think that's actually something else there, Scott, as a great, as an aside, and something that's a relearning is the importance of just baseline blood work for
Yeah.
people, or baseline metrics for people, because we had a guest on just about a month ago, maybe a little over a month ago, um, Justin, who would say, yeah, Dustin LaBelle,
Yeah.
who was using just blood pressure cuff, and I think, was it, uh, oxygen saturation. What was he using? I know he's using blood pressure.
Mhm. I don't think he was doing SpO2.
It was something else.
Was it just basic heart rate? It was
I think
very
it was, you know what,
simple.
resting heart rate might have been the other thing.
I think it was resting heart
So
rate.
having those things, whether it's blood work, resting heart rate, and blood pressure, that type of thing, having some metrics that you can go back to and using those as some
Yeah.
objective pieces of information, I think that's super valuable and a lot less invasive than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Data points, I think, are super helpful. It could be, whether it's blood work or certain other labs or metrics like blood pressure, heart rate, HRV, or whether it's, even objective uh, range of motion tests, things like this. Like if you have some things that you can assess periodically, you can see if you're actually moving in the right direction or if you're just doing a lot of work and sort of spinning your wheels on things.
Yeah, for sure. And as a matter of fact, even basic like metabolic panels could be hugely beneficial in terms of like and this is like your liver enzymes, your kidney enzyme, which are usually free with like your regular yearly physical, and you get those a bunch of times, or you can go to like an urgent care and get them for like 35 to $50, and you can get that done like every 6 to 8 or 12 weeks or whatever. But Andy Galpin, who's a professor at UC Berkeley, I want to say, had a great Instagram live with Dan Garner, who both of them work with very high level athletes. Dan Gardner, I believe, has coached multiple gold medalists in the Olympics and professional athletes, and they have a very systematic approach when it comes to looking at things like blood work and being able to dissect exactly what's going on from the liver malfunctioning to like viral slash bacterial infections just by looking at like white count and neutrophils and that kind of stuff. And people spin their wheels, or hydration, for instance. And they take a look at these basic blood markers and the ratios of them. And unfortunately, like you can't learn this stuff in like a university. You literally have to dig into the research and then work with people to long enough to be like, okay, cool. Like this is what the data looks like. This is what this individual's longitudinal data looks like. And then bang, we can make some assessments from there. But like literally basic metabolic stuff, you can get a lot of information out of it and performance metrics based upon that. Like you can really bump up people's performance when, for instance, and again, another learning from this year is things like hydration and, uh, uh, sodium and
Electrolyte levels of,
electrolyte
yeah,
levels.
importance of, yeah.
And Andrew Huberman, who we've talked about before on the podcast, who's a Stanford medical school professor, made a prediction that 2022 will be number one prediction is salt as a key supplement for like performance.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the new buzzword next year is like, and maybe the removal of stigma might be some salt stuff, Scott.
Might finally be coming around. Yeah.
Once again,
It's been such a
Scott
big
is ahead of the
stigma for
curve.
years. Let's see. That's a good one too. Yeah, I would say if I had to pick another one, I would piggyback and say the importance of electrolytes. Again, it's something I've known, but I really took it more to heart this year, and I really saw um, a pretty profound impact. Um, it's interesting. I've kind of watched my uh, heart rate and HRV scores change over the last number of months a little bit. And while on the surface, I think you might think it was a negative change, right? My resting heart rate has been steadily rising, and to some degree, my HRV is a little bit lower, but low resting heart rate isn't always an indicator of health. A lot of times, it's actually a marker of metabolic slowdown and
Great
a
point.
system. Yeah. And especially now, I've worked with a number of people. In fact, I'm working with someone right now who has a very low heart rate that really shouldn't have one, right? They're not training for, larger endurance volumes and don't have the history of that. So in that case, you can be sure that it's a case of cumulative fatigue. Now, in my case, I've done, much aerobic training of various types through the years, but but I think that probably at least half of my low heart rate was probably just metabolic issues from not enough calories through the years. And
Yep.
while I don't think have no signs of having a low metabolism for a number of years, I think this kind of brought it up to a new level because, again, recovery capacity, sleep quality, just energy through the day constantly is excellent, but not in a buzzed out, adrenaline laden way, which I'm familiar with what that feels like from
Oh yeah, a little too much
the
caffeine, a little bit
the
too much of this or that.
just naturally, yeah. Because I mean, back in the early the super low carb paleo days, yeah, we all drank decaf. We used to joke about that we would, even that wired us out. Well, yeah, we were so fired up with our own stress hormones. It only took a bit of
Yeah.
decaf to kind of do the job.
Yeah, it's incredible. That's a great point. And to speak to your point about low heart rates, a gentleman who I was working with who had the heart attack a few months back. I saw him the other day. He has a resting heart rate of 52.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
just because you have a low heart rate and resting doesn't mean that you're free of coronary artery disease or some kind
Yeah,
of, predisposition to, you know, a vascular disease. So I think
yeah,
getting that stuff checked, and another thing is like, once you hit 50, really, really dial stuff in terms of like your getting tested and blood work and the necessary things, because a lot of the things that happen in the next 20 years or so could very easily be prevented if you catch it early enough.
yeah,
Earlier this year, I got my skin checked for the first time in my life. And it was a big sigh of relief. Nothing was wrong, thankfully. But like now I have a baseline. They take a picture of all my body and that kind of stuff and all the little growths, and they're going to keep an eye on it. That was in April of this year. And I plan on going back April of next year and getting, my skin checked. And I think that's a really, really important one. And also leads me to another point, which is a lot of the things that happen with the body are not in the short term. It's a cumulative effect over years, and the body is super resilient to these changes. And then eventually it's just a complete collapse of the structure. And you go, oh, what was it? Oh, it was that chicken I ate last night. It's like, no, it was the systemic inflammation over the last 10 years or whatever it might be. Right.
yeah, yeah. Generally, it's a long accumulation of things, and something is, breaks a camel's back, so to speak. But it's not that one last little small thing you added to the camel, right? It's the collective of all the other stuff that's on there that is really the issue.
Yeah, yeah. Let me specify a little bit more, Scott, because I know sometimes you make things a little bit more specific. It makes it easier for you to kind of hone in on some of the big takeaways or whatever it might be. What about as a coach this last year, Scott? Are there any things that you take away from this year that you've learned or relearned just as a coach in the way you communicate and the way you coach individuals?
Um,
Because this was your
I think,
first full year going completely online.
yeah, yep, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was basically a year. Just it was December last year. It started. It was kind of a soft start, and then the first was first of the year. Ooh, which just reminds me, it was a
Gotta
brutal time
charge,
a year
gotta
ago
charge
as
the
I
people.
was. No, I was just thinking back to during the holidays last year was when I was getting the old gym cleaned out, and how that was one of
Yeah,
the
right.
busiest
God,
times that ever was, because then
it
I
felt
was
like
getting
that ago.
stuff going. Yeah, I know. Anyway, yeah, I think the importance of finding ways to make that connection with people, especially now that it is more virtual or remote, and if you make the effort and just talk to people, it like still works really, really well. I work with a couple of people that one or two of them I've never ever met in person,
Oh, that's
but like
cool.
I feel like they're good friends now. We chat, we know a lot about each other. It's while we're training, and it's kind of funny how that works.
That's really special. Yeah. On my end, I think I've had to be really, really diligent about being in touch with people on a regular basis, and how valuable it is to just shoot people text messages in the morning when I'm not doing anything, just to kind of let them know, like, hey, you're on my mind, and you should be on your mind.
Yeah,
The things that we talk about. It's not. This isn't the day to take that off. this is the day to double down on it and really hone in on those things and just do it one day at a time. And I like doing text messages in the morning. I'll also do video messages because it's just, I don't know. I picked it up from
It's easy.
somebody. It
Yeah.
was just, it's so easy. Just like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Here's my face. How's it going? You know, we
That's
were,
probably one I should have take advantage of once in a while too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it feels a little awkward, but then you're just like, oh, you do it because you care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And who doesn't open up a text message and see, oh, a video and be like, oh, I'm not watching that. Like you're gonna watch it and you're gonna be like, oh wow, like it's good to see your face. And it's these little things that we have to do because, you know, like you said, we are more remote. We are a little bit more separated.
Yeah. Yep. Those are the exactly kinds of things I do. I check in, certainly more than I probably did in the past, even with the remote people, that have been that way for a long time.
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting is this probably Scott, is this like your first year that you haven't done a seminar?
I'm pretty sure I didn't do a seminar last year.
Okay, so
Well,
these last
now
two,
I've
oh,
done,
oh,
I have done numerous seminars over, virtual seminars.
okay, okay, okay. But in
So I've
person,
done,
you haven't done
I
any.
haven't been, yeah, I haven't been
Yeah.
to, yeah, definitely probably 2019 somewhere. Yeah. So
Wow.
I'd
Wow.
have to think, yeah. So that's a big change, of course, not going to live seminars.
Yeah. I plan on probably doing something in January. We'll see. I'm gonna confirm with the missus, but I would love to. It's fun, man. It reinvigorates you, and I think
Oh,
that's also
yeah.
another
I
just
remember. Yeah.
just another learning and relearning is that like if you feel in a funk, like I've underestimated the power of a group and being with other people. And obviously, you know, post COVID, I think things are a little different and we're a little bit more mindful about certain things. Like do it in a park, not in garage closed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can still do all the
Yeah.
fun things that you did in the past, but like you just gotta be a little smarter. Like I had a great training session with a friend of mine the other day and we were outside, you know, in the driveway, just kicking butt, taking names, and it was fun. It was a great time. And I was like, dang, I got to do this like once a week because it fills your cup. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's why I've still enjoyed doing these. Where we're the crew from the old gym, we
Yeah.
still meet up monthly, and like we just had turned out to be real good, unexpected beatdown I designed, but last Saturday on a cold morning in a wet parking lot, but we did it
Oh,
anyway, and it was a lot of fun.
classic, classic, classic. Yeah. Yeah. Then I guess the last one for me, Scott, in terms of things that I've learned in 2021 is how much more there is out there to learn and how um, the information is continually being updated and how I love testing this stuff out on myself and seeing what potentially can be handed down to clients and vice versa. The things that I give to a client and I learn from them, I go, oh wow, okay, that was something that I didn't see coming, but hey, that's a happy accident. And you know how that is continually evolving throughout the like. There's nothing set in stone. You know, the book that was written 5 years ago about like the foundational strength training. Yeah, there's some foundational stuff, but like there are so many variables that are apparent now that we're just scratching the surface on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The information is.
Especially in terms of like the aerobic stuff, Scott, because
Yeah.
you've peeled back some of that stuff in terms of the ability for people to is it a breathing limitation? Is it a local oxygen utilization thing? Like that's a huge one I learned from you.
Yeah, and that's another one I was going to throw out there that for me just and being able to see that stuff in live time and how you could impact that by just changing your structure of breath could change your fuel utilization. And there's just so much information coming out on that with the various new technologies and lots of things we were doing in the past. Maybe we didn't know why they were working. They weren't working exactly because or how we thought they were. That they obviously had some effects and now we can explain and see why certain people respond to one particular type of training really well and others actually don't, and maybe they even get worse. But then there's a vice versa group too.
It's a very
It's,
good point, Scott. Very, very
it,
good point.
it allows you to explain, right? Because those individuals had different limiters, and one system that they may have fallen into might have hit those things that they needed, where someone else that got into that system, it didn't help them. They were already really good at that. These other things were the problem, and you're never going to get any further by going the wrong direction.
That's exactly right. So Scott, overall, I think it was an amazing year, and one in which I think we both learned a lot. And I think maybe, in a year from now, I'll hopefully be able to sit down, listen to this podcast, and go, "Oh wow, man, I learned a lot in that year, and I learned even more in this next year." So
Yeah. Well,
um,
it's like fitness, right? It compounds. I was thinking about that just randomly earlier this morning. In fact, when I was doing something, it's like, it's like a couple of decades of this stuff compounding, but then and it's still not, it's not stopping, and there's lots of information, and just hopefully all of us in all our areas just keep upgrading every year.
I think that's a great point there, Scott. And obviously you have lots of insights and an amazing coaching background, and I imagine there are a lot of people who would want to work with you to unlock their ultimate performance. So, how do they get a hold of you?
Scott Hagness Training at gmail.com. The emails are Instagram, Scott Hagness Training, and you can DM me there.
Awesome. And I'm Sean LaFloch. You can be at flockfitness.com, Flock Fitness on all the social media platforms. The 6-week front rack program is now released to the public, I think today, as of this podcast coming out. So it was on pre-release to all the email subscribers, and it will be released to the public whenever this podcast is released. So get on that. It's an awesome program. Seen some great results from the individuals who have gone through it in the beta testing, as they say. So Scott, I appreciate your time, brother. And yeah, we'll talk soon, but Merry Christmas to you there, Scott.
Yeah. Merry Christmas to you as well. And everyone else.
Everybody listening, Merry Christmas to you.
All right.
Later, brother.
Later.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you like what you heard, please do us a favor. Go online, give us a 5-star review. It helps grow the podcast more than you know, and it's free to you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend, and we will see you next time with a brand new episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast.